you let people run rampant and roughshod all over the truth and just let them do what they want and just believe everybody and help them be who they are and give them no direction or guidance or anything, men crumble under that. We need structure. We need discipline. We need objective truth with a capital T. It's the same reason we're starting to see military engagement and enrollment numbers go up over the past year or so. Kipp, what's up, man? Great to see you on this Monday morning.
Good to see you as well. Do you have big plans this week? It's a Monday. We talk about planning our week and kind of being in the right headspace. How's this week looking?
This week is just a typical week. I put more. That's what this is going to be this week. I put more activities on the calendar for my kids' sports stuff, and it is a lot. But yeah, so that's going on. Had a pretty decent weekend. I went and ran. You know, I'm still training for that marathon, and then pulled the canoe down. So I'm going to start working on that again. These are a couple of things that have just been looming over my head for a while that we're gonna get these done this year.
Got it. I had a good Easter. Happy Easter, by the way.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
So
should we get into some ideas? I know you have a headline. You want to rant a little bit. I just had one thing I wanted to share. I was listening to a podcast this morning from Andrew Huberman, but it was the full length podcast actually I was listening to. Yeah. And it was something along the lines of like overcoming different addictions, whether it's drug abuse or alcohol abuse or pornography, gambling, womanizing, just these coping mechanisms that we tend to slip into from time to time. To varying degrees, I guess. And the guy that came on, it was really insightful what I caught. I didn't catch all of it because I was just listening to it at the gym. But this guy had an interesting thought about somebody that was very successful. And the phrase he used just stood out to me. And it was the pursuit of pleasure is what most people are pursuing. They want pleasure in their life. So they're constantly pursuing the thing that will give them the most pleasure versus the pleasure of pursuit. Which is what we should be moving towards. Yeah. Just being happy and grateful and glad that we are healthy and that we can pursue something meaningful and something exciting. I've been listening to The Gap and the Gain as well. I think this was in the podcast, not The Gap and the Gain. But I don't know. I'm listening to both of them at the same time, so it could be one or the other. But anyways, it was an interesting thought. And it got me thinking and pondering this morning. And I wrote some things down about my own pursuit of things that are pleasurable. And by the way, when we hear pleasure, sometimes there's a little bit of a negative tinge to it, like a selfish tinge. That's not even what I'm saying. It's the things that make us happy and fulfilled. Yeah. Or just finding a way to be happy and fulfilled now, currently.
Immediately. Yeah.
Regardless of what the circumstances are, and then using that as fuel to pursue meaningful and significant things in our lives. It was an interesting thought. It stood out to me. I wanted to share it with the guys.
Yeah, I love it, man. I was thinking about this last week, how often people are not even aware enough to know that they're even doing that, right? Like they're so removed from, you used the term womanizing, right? Like they're like, oh no, it's, I feel lonely. Like they don't even understand that like, they're chasing some level of excitement to address some other issue. Like their level of awareness is so withdrawn that, man, it saddens me, I think, because last week I was thinking about this a lot, like how often we're blinded around how we're showing up in the world and our actions are justified in reason and all these things, when in reality, it's much deeper than that. And we're blinded to it, and we don't even, we're just cogs in the process, because we're not even self-aware enough to understand the psychology around why are we doing what we're doing, and there's just so much power, and it's crazy. And it's kind of depressing, right? Because there's so many people, I think, that aren't even scratching the surface of that awareness, and that's at the root of growth, at least for me, in my opinion, but.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. It is depressing to look outward and see that. but it's also depressing to do that work yourself. Like, let's be honest. Doing that work is not fun work to do. And as they were talking about in this podcast, he was saying that the reason that we engage in these behaviors or activities is because we're pursuing something on a very shallow level. So, for example, pornography, and I've heard this often made the case that is in some cases, is that it's a quest for intimacy and connection with a woman. Obviously, a very inferior way of connecting and having deep intimacy with a woman, but that is what some people are after. I tend to get busy, and that's not always a good thing because sometimes I should be still, or I wouldn't say isolated, but even loneliness, like just sitting with, is not a thing I'm real comfortable with. Yeah. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to sit in isolation. I don't want to sit with my thoughts. And so I find outlets to not do that. And it's hard because some of those things are healthy. Going to the gym, for example, is healthy. Going to a meetup is healthy. Putting together an event is healthy. But if you're doing it to escape what you actually need, then you'll never get what you actually need. You'll always be filling it with trivial, surface level, inferior activities and results. So yeah, it's hard and it sucks and it's not fun, but it should be done.
I love it. So my rant, I have to bring it up because it's so funny. I think it's so hilarious. And the internet
Are you going to talk about the space crew?
Yes, totally. And the internet has done such a great job at poking fun of it. So it's so great, right? So if like anyone doesn't know, right, 6 celebrity women, rode a Blue Origin rocket to space. Total travel time, I think it was like 11 or 12
minutes or something.
Yeah, literally just like went up, and then just came down, right? And the part that is just so funny is that this is being promoted as this historical event, that this is an all-woman crew. And I've even seen some headlines call them astronauts. And I'm like...
They've called themselves astronauts.
I'm like, what? I had that. Did you have the dream as an astronaut? I think our generation all wanted to be astronauts when we were little.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
So I remember that. And I also remember that dream, realizing that it was never going to happen because I wasn't smart enough. and the level of effort that would have to go into being an astronaut was not on my radar. Let's say it that way. And then we get 6 ladies, obviously wealthy, fly up, fall down, and now they're astronauts. And it's so hilarious and it's pathetic and all these kind of things. But full disclosure, we do this shit, right? Like I have a keynote on this Wednesday that I'm doing. And they're like, we need a bio. And my first natural instinct was to do what?
I'm an astronaut.
No, exactly. I'm an astronaut. I've accomplished all these things and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And I read it and I was disgusted with myself. Because I was like, come on. Smoke and mirrors, lacks humanity. Just like, I don't know, propping myself up. Threw away the entire bio. And I rewrote the entire bio as like literally an effing joke. I just made a joke. I'm like, and I've accomplished this, which was probably a self-paid, award. I'm a hillbilly from Elsinore, Utah. Like, dude, like, stop. Let's stop.
Nobody.
It's pathetic.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? I have some ideas. Maybe you'll like them and they'll connect with you. If so, awesome. If not, who cares?
Leave it alone.
Right. Yeah. But the best part about all of this is what the internet has done. And so I wrote these down because I think they're so hilarious. So
the internet will always win.
I know. And these are the things that I've heard. Okay. So based upon this idea of us, that we're all astronauts, right? If we just ride in a ship for 11 minutes. They went to space for 11 minutes. Cool. I built an IKEA dresser, so now I'm a structural engineer. I rebooted my router once, so I guess I'm in IT now. I made boxed mac and cheese without instructions. Call me a chef.
You're a chef.
Yeah, I watched a medical drama and didn't faint. Technically, I'm a doctor. I jumped on a trampoline once. Guess I've experienced zero gravity as well. I once held my breath for 30 seconds. Guess I'm a Navy SEAL. I mowed the lawn and sweat a little. NASA, I'm ready to be an astronaut in training. So anyhow, I don't know. It's silly. It's so silly.
It's silly that it's played up the way it is.
I know. And I love thank you, internet, for calling BS. Because that's what we should do.
We should. Okay, so let me give a little bit of my take on this. Okay, so we should call BS where it exists, and there's a lot about it that is BS. I did hear some feedback that I did not agree with, and people are like, "Oh, well, if I had money like that, I would do it too, and we could have solved world hunger with the amount of money that it costs to whatever." Yeah. And my thought is, number one, people can choose how they want to spend their money.
Yeah,
however they want.
And full disclosure, really quick,
or not. But they can choose how they want to do it.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome.
It is awesome.
This is all said with the idea that, how cool is that they did that, right? So, yeah, full disclosure.
And the other thing that you have to consider, I saw a video on Instagram, I think it was just last night, I was mindlessly scrolling, and a guy was excited to show off his TV in 1993, and it was this $5,000 box, and and I remember, the shoebox type phones that only the wealthy could have. See, the reality of these types of things is they pave the way for regular, ordinary day consumers like you and me to be able to potentially take part in this at some point down the road. So I'm actually very excited and optimistic about it. I know they didn't go to space and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're right. The astronaut thing, that's a little much. The thing that they're a crew, all woman crew. They're not the crew. That's like me being on a flight from Salt Lake to New York and saying, "Hey, I'm basically an airplane pilot now." I sat there and watched a movie for 2 hours. Yeah. There is actually, and I heard this, and I'm like, let me check this out. So let's assume, for the sake of argument, that this was indeed the first all-female crew in space. Let's just assume they have a claim to that. Okay. This is not actually true. The first woman in space was Soviet cosmonaut Valentina Tereshkova. I'm butchering that for sure.
Like in the 60s, right?
Who flew on the Vostok 6 mission on June 16th, 1963. She was the first woman to orbit Earth, completing, here's the key, a 3-day solo mission. She is the first woman in space and the first to be on an all-female crew in space. So let's just set the record straight with that.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Comical. But we all do it. But yeah, I like it. All right, man, let's get to some questions. Let's get to the meat of this discussion.
Yeah, so we're going to field some questions from the Iron Council. To learn more, orderofman.com/Iron Council. John Preston, thanks for everything you both do for all of us here in the Iron Council. I have a job interview scheduled for later this week, and although my background kills their minimum requirements for the job position, I don't understand. I'm sorry, I lost my thought. Okay, I don't understand why they're not asking for more. I can't get over a feeling that I'm reaching above my level of expertise and skill set. The imposter syndrome is real. I have a jitterness I just can't seem to shake. When is the last time that you tried to take on something that you felt might stretch your comfort zone a little too much? And how did you handle the nerves? Thanks again.
I do that every week. I take on something that I feel like is out of my wheelhouse. But isn't that the point? Yeah. And I don't attach too much of my own self-worth to the result of it. That's not to say I don't try my hardest or I don't try to learn what I need to learn, but if you're not pushing yourself, it seems a little silly. You made an assumption in there that you said, why aren't they asking for more? I don't know. Why don't you ask them that? Maybe they are, or maybe they had a bad experience, or maybe there could be 1,000 reasons. Let's not assume what it is. When you go in for the interview, I would say that. Yeah. I would say, hey, it seems like for this position, you would require I'm confident I have the skills to do it based on what you're asking for. It seems like you would require more of a skill set. Is there something that I'm missing? Or is there something I'm not aware of? Or is there another position you might be looking? I mean, there's good questions you can ask where you no longer have to assume what it is. As far as the imposter syndrome goes, it's hard because I've never really experienced imposter syndrome the way people describe it, because I don't feel like I'm an imposter. And I don't feel like striving to do something I've never done before makes me a fraud or a phony. Yeah. Imagine if I wanted to be a great football player. And so I started training at the gym and working with a football coach and going to tryouts and going to practices and learning plays and watching tape. Would anybody ever call me a fraud for trying to be a good football player in my pursuit to be better at the thing I want to get better at? Or if I wanted to play the guitar and I wanted to start a band and I started practicing in the guitar and I learned the chords and I played every day, nobody would say, Ryan's a fraud. Look at him trying to learn how to play the guitar. They would just say, that's cool. He's trying to do something he's never done before. I hope it works out. I don't know if it will, but it's cool he's trying it. That's what the people in my circle would say. And so you're not being an imposter by pursuing something that's important to you. I think we need to get over that idea. Now, if you're lying about it, if Kipp, you're my boss and you're like, hey, Ryan, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yep, I can do that. And I'm like flat out blatantly lying about some code you need me to write, that's an issue. I should feel a little bit of guilt and shame around that because I deceived you in order to get what I felt like I wanted. But I don't think that's what you're doing. The key to overcoming imposter syndrome is being honest, being humble, and striving to make yourself better, period.
Yeah, I love it. I was going to add something, but you just wrapped up really solid there with what my thoughts were. Here's the reality. It's all about just alignment, and as well as I think sometimes, Ryan, and I love that you said this too, because when I read like how like he said, what was his question? He said, have you guys dealt with this? I feel like I'm dealing with this all the time. Stretched. Right. And someone asked me literally yesterday, they're like, hey, I have this public speaking event. Any recommendations? And at first I went all tactical, right? Pause, embrace a pause, blah, blah, blah. And then I remembered and I thought, oh, here's your answer. It's not about you. Well, what do you mean? I'm like, if your speaking engagement is wrapped up around you looking good and the avoidance of looking bad, then you will be nervous and you've lost sight of what it's about. Get connected to the purpose of it. It's bigger than you. The subject that you're talking about is bigger than you. It's more important than you. And put your heart into making sure that that is available for people to receive. Make it about that. And now it's not about, oh, what if I look? Stop. That's going to distract you from the message anyway. And so focus on the bigger thing. And in your example, John, what's the bigger thing? Are you the right fit for this company? Because if you're not, you shouldn't get the job. So all that you're doing is you're having a conversation around alignment. What are you guys looking for? This is what I have. Do you have what I want? Am I what you need? And do we have something? If we don't, we don't. But when we get so wrapped up in that idea of judgment of how we're going to be perceived and thinking we're deserving of something, don't focus on that. And I'm not saying like we don't try to be better at what we do or whatever. But when it comes to these moments, you are where you are. So be authentic. Have integrity. Don't smoke and mirror it, and be frank and see if there's an opportunity for alignment. If there's not, there's not. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything about you. Now you might go back to the drawing board and level up in other areas to get better, but it should always be rooted in truth.
Yeah. And then you don't have the same feelings of being an imposter. I also think men do this a lot. We place such a heavy emphasis on the outcome or the desired result or the future goal that we don't even allow the thing to play out first. Guys do this with women quite often is they'll go on a date and they'll start thinking, well, this is going to be my wife and this is the one. And it's like, whoa. It's a first date. Like, why don't you worry right now about seeing if you guys are compatible, alignment, right? That's another thing you talked about. And just enjoy a good conversation. It's like the adage that anxiety is worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet. And I'm not saying it just goes away because you choose not to have it. It's there, it's present. But sometimes we just have to let the thing play out. You know, a lot of guys will ask, for example, this is a common question. Hey, I have my first jiu-jitsu class tonight. What should I know? Just stop. Chill.
Just
your
show
first
up
class
and
is
relax.
tonight. It's not right now. It's tonight.
Yeah.
So do your work, spend time with family. Don't worry. You're going to a professional school. Like, they're going to teach you just relax. And that's rich coming from me, one of the most high-strung people there are. But it's something I'm very aware of that I need to work on personally too.
Yeah, which goes back to what we talked about earlier, right? The importance of at least being aware, because then you can do something with it, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right, Jeremy Kofi.
What's something? And good luck, too, by the way, on the interview.
Yeah, good point. Jeremy Kofi, what's something you've learned from one of your kids that made you a better man?
Yeah, I saw this question. I pondered on this. There's a lot, of course. You know, it's just you're forced to become a better man in a lot of ways when you have kids. But I thought about, immediately my oldest son came to mind. And he is one of the most level-headed, even-keeled kids that I'm not even going to say kid, young men that I have ever come across. I don't understand it. I don't understand how he's just calm and cool and collected. Even when he's frustrated, I've seen him not play so well at lacrosse and be really upset. I can tell just by his demeanor, but still he's so calm. And he's willing to hear from other coaches and willing to take it as feedback. He's constantly thinking about how to improve, but he's never super excited and worked up, and he's never depressed and down and beating himself up. I think that's amazing. That is not me. I don't know where he gets that, because that is not me. I am up and down and up, and I'm all over the place depending on what's going on any given day. So I could definitely learn to maybe take a little bit off the highs and tack them onto the bottom and bring myself up during the lows.
Yeah. You know, the item that comes to mind for me is my two daughters. Their level of thoughtfulness and love for others is such a great model to me. I have to plan to be thoughtful. Hey, I should be thoughtful and brainstorm. They just have it built
just
into
ingrained.
Them. Yeah, and it's rocks my world. I mean, Asia and I, we got a text from our neighbor. This was last week, I think. And they texted us and said, "Thank you so much for dinner. Your kids are so sweet." We have no idea what they're talking about.
You're like, what is that?
And I'm like, what? Come to find out, we were out. My daughters were kind of they're babysitting at home. And they decided to cook, have some baked goods, and make dinner for the neighbor. That's an elderly couple.
That's awesome.
We didn't do that. We're like, what? They did what? You know what I mean? And and this is how they operate. And they have written love notes to. We have one elderly man. He's passed away a couple years ago. My daughters called him Cookie Grandpa because he always brought cookies to church. And and they write notes to him. And leave it on his door. We're not telling them to do that. They're just wicked thoughtful. I don't know. It's a great modeling for how much more empathetic and loving I need to be.
That's cool. But I was thinking after the dinner incident, Kipp's over there like, what are we just feeding the whole neighborhood now? Prices of groceries aren't cheap.
I told you to stay in the house. Yeah.
All right, man, what's next?
All right, Dalton Harward. What are some of your favorite tactics to use to be more patient and understanding father? I find myself far too often getting short and overstimulated with my 3-year-olds aren't cooperating. Also, thank you, Kipp, for your answer to my last question about contending with the trivial tasks at work.
The only tactic I have, I got two. Get yourself out of the environment for a minute if you start to feel yourself like that. Like, just disengage. Like, not forever. Like, you can't run away. You can't escape. That would be weak. But if your 3-year-old is driving you up the wall, which 3-year-olds have a tendency of doing, like, maybe they need to calm down and sit in their room for a little bit because they're not behaving. And so that's some distance. Yeah. You can always come back and correct it. Or maybe you just need to go outside and go for a walk or something. That's number one. Just remove yourself from the environment with a plan to come back so that you can do it in a more level-headed, clear way. I wish I could say I did that more often than I do. That's number one. Number two, don't be so busy. Yeah. All of us are so busy. I told you I was putting the games in the calendar. It's like stressing. You heard, I audibly went, ugh. Yeah. It's so stressful, but we're so consumed and so busy. And I know for myself, when I'm busy that way and I'm inundated and I'm not doing work, you should go listen to last week's Friday Field Notes, the perils of self-betrayal, because I talk a lot about, in that episode, making sure that you are working and that you are in integrity so that when you put work away or another task away, you can be fully present for the thing in hand, in this case, your 3-year-old. Yeah. But you can't be present with your 3-year-old the way that he or she needs you to be if you're thinking about the deadline at work that you missed because you failed to do all your work on time. That's your problem. That's your fault. That is also your responsibility. So make sure you have a system in place for getting things done as they need to be done. And then that way, when you're engaged in other activities, you'll always be, I think, more mindful and present to what actually needs to happen in those moments. Maybe it is discipline. Maybe it's a hug. Maybe it's a stern warning. Maybe it's fun. Yeah, fun. That's the last thing that comes to mind for me. So yes, that too. Yeah. But yeah, you can discern a little bit more what the situation calls from or for, rather than being so reactionary to it. Because it's probably the deadline at work that's spilling over, and now your 3-year-old's catching the brunt of your lack of performance at work, and that's not fair.
Totally. I mean, this is why that I relate to that so well, Ryan. I mean, I can't think of a single time where I'm short with my kids and it wasn't tied to stress from work or me trying to multitask and get something else done while they're trying to get my attention. Not once, I don't think. I think it's always
I don't think it exists.
Is the scenario. Always. Yeah. And my playbook, which I don't operate on all the time, it is just to have fun. Man, just let go, and be fully present is such great advice. It's fun. It reminds me of, I remember Asia did a trip with the kids, and I was with the little guy, and he was probably around Dalton. He was probably around your son's age or your 3-year-old's age. I think he was around 3 or 4. And I remember I think it's funny anyway. I remember the first thing I was like, put him in the car and I'm hanging out with him all day. And I'm like, and Asia called, she's like, how's it going? I'm like, he will not shut up. He will not shut up. It's driving me mad. He just talks and talks and talks. You know what I mean? And the only way I could deal with it is not think about the other things that I need to think about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, because his noise was just overbearing, and he's just excited, and it's, and you're shooting that down. So
I think if you just have less on your plate, you can be more mindful.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump over to Jeffrey Hoffman. Loaded question, dude. Why do women decide to leave and break up families?
Yeah. I mean, first, I'm sorry about the situation you're dealing with. I'm sure you're asking that from a place of experience, whether it's recent or in the past, and that sucks, And of course, it has a negative spin to it, and that's the lens in which you're viewing it. There might be some truth to it. There might not. Yeah. So, but I'll answer both. Let's start with a pessimistic take. Part of it is they're just selfish. I mean, that's the reality, and unfortunately, modern culture promotes selfishness in women and men, everybody.
Yeah.
And so she don't need no man. She can do it on her own. You're keeping her under her thumb. You just want her barefoot and pregnant. And so they just make a mockery of the nuclear family. And they promote women not needing to be in this dynamic.
And if you need men, you're less of a woman.
You're weak.
I mean, they're living in a culture that is promoting them not to need and or want to be with you.
That's right. So that's something realistically that men have to contend with. And if you're married, you have to realize that she's hearing those messages on the news. She's hearing it in entertainment. It's all women's empowerment. She's probably hearing it from her friends who are bitter because they got divorced 5 years ago and they're out. I'm trying not to be overly pessimistic, but maybe they're out living a less than ideal life and they're impacting and influencing lives. Like, that's the reality of it. Now, that being said, there's other reasons that I can think are justifiable. Abuse, cheating, I think would be one. I think those two probably immediately come to mind. And there's other things. Like, I would also say that if a woman has repeatedly asked for changed behavior and it doesn't happen and it doesn't take place, how long is she required to bang her head against the wall? Same for men. Yeah. Like, if you want her to step up in a certain way and she's not performing to the agreed expectation, and by the way, notice I said agreed, has to be communicated. Yeah. How long do you have to bang your head against the wall before that happens? And so it's hard, and there's legitimate reasons. I do think one of the distinctions generally, I know there's exception to this, between the way that men and women communicate is generally women tend to think that they're sharing things like, hey, I need you to change because if you don't, like, I don't want to be in this relationship. I actually believe that when women say what they say, they think that's what they're saying, but more often than not, it comes out as like, hey, I'm concerned about this behavior, or I'm not happy right now, which are valid concerns, but it's not, hey, if you don't change, I'm done with this. Yeah. Those are different things. And so women, if you're listening, you need to be very clear on your communication, and also you need to make sure he understands the gravity at which you're speaking. I know it's uncomfortable, but if you say, hey, I'm concerned about this, that doesn't mean I'm leaving if you don't change. Or, hey, I haven't been happy for a while. That doesn't mean, hey, I'm packing my bags, which is what you might be doing. So you owe it to him to tell him the truth in a way that he can hear the gravity of the situation. Because I will tell you, I think the overwhelming majority of men will change if they understand the gravity of the situation. Yeah, they will. And then men generally are more direct and blunt, and the downside of that is we can be abrasive and condescending and that sort of thing. So yeah, those are the reasons. Those are the reasons women leave. And at the end of the day, it's because they believe one of two things: that their life is going to be better without you in it, or that their children's lives are going to be better without you in it. That may be warranted. It may not be, but they have to believe that. Otherwise, they would not make that decision.
Totally. And there's power in understanding what leads up to that. Like I'll use an example of in corporate America, from my perspective, a leader shouldn't try to get an employee to stay once the employee threatens to leave and because they got a better offer somewhere else. It's like, you're already too late, right? Like, even in that example, Ryan, if you're like, hey, Kipp, I'm giving my 2-week notice, I'm like, oh, hold on. Why are you unhappy? Yeah, let's go give you a raise, throw some money at you. Like, well, hold on. How do we even get here? Oh, shit. I should have asked you why you were disengaged a month ago.
3 years ago.
I should have asked you why you're unhappy already. And not only that, as men, right, we have a tendency to, it's like, well, if she's saying that nothing's wrong, then nothing's wrong. Man, guy, we got to be connected, right? Are we loving this thing? Is it going well? Are we aligned? Are we fully engaged? Are we excited about what we have? No, we're not. Okay, let's make some pivots. What does it look like? What are the psychological needs of my partner? In what ways have I created learned hopelessness because they've brought up time and time again something and it didn't have any resolve, and now they feel like there's nothing they can do to change the circumstance because in the past it has had zero results? In what ways are we manipulating and controlling where they don't feel like they have a say and that they're just being acted upon by you?
Listen to this, Kipp.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
I was just going to say this one last thing. Most wars in relationships are of the cold variety. They're stone walls. They're being withdrawn from your partner. They're not being grateful for what they're doing. It's choosing not to serve them. It's of the Cold War variety. And then over a period of time, then it becomes just too late.
Yeah. I think this would support what you're saying. So this is a survey from Marble Law, and I'm not sure how valid this one is, but I've seen a lot of surveys like this that support this assertion. It says here, the amount of time a woman spends thinking about divorce before initiating the process varies greatly, but a significant portion, over 55%, report considering it for a year or longer. About 19% waited only a few months before pursuing action, and 12.8% waited a year before taking action. So what that means is, if I'm just doing the math here roughly, that, what's that, 60, almost 70% of women who initiated divorce have waited for a year, have been thinking about it for a year before they actually initiated it. So I think it supports what you're saying. And I'm not by any means supporting being flippant about breaking up a family, and I hope it doesn't come across that way. Yeah. But there are some things within our control, at least in our realm of influence, that we ought to be aware of to give ourselves a greater chance of staying with the people we love.
Totally. And we're not going to know. Like if we're not having the conversation. I remember at one point I had a conversation with my wife and I said, hey, I'm not liking how things are. And her response was, I thought everything was going really great lately. And it was funny, right? Because I was like, really? Are you serious? She's like, yeah.
Yeah, because you were less present. She was loving life, man.
Yeah, and I thought, interesting. And that goes both ways, right? We got to check in. We got to check in. Yeah. All right, Joe Marino.
I feel for him, man. I actually feel for him because I know it's coming from a place of bitterness, and a lot of men have been there, and so I feel for you. I do.
Yeah, I want to apologize, actually, Jeffrey. I don't mean to laugh at your question. You know what I mean? I get it. To your point, Ryan, this is serious. We've been through
loaded.
This.
You were right. It's loaded.
But we've been through this, and trust me, I thought the same thing. Women, all of them. It's your world's falling apart. Right. So it's tough. Joe Marino, after your divorce, how much time did you take for yourself before getting back into the dating scene? During that time, what factors determine if it was time to date? And a second marriage in the cards for you, or is having a girlfriend adequate going forward?
Yeah, so I started dating about 3 or 4 months after the divorce was finalized. And some people are like, oh, that's too early, or it doesn't really matter what other people think.
Yeah.
I wasn't out to get married or replace anything. That wasn't what I was doing. And I don't think it was I still don't think it was too early. I felt like I was in a good place because I had done a lot of work, and I had done work not just for that 3 to 4 months, but I'd also done work for about 6 months prior to that of becoming sober, getting therapy, learning how to journal, learning how to process thoughts, learning about where my frustrations and angers and resentments and all of those things, just the factors of life were derived from. So I spent a lot of time thinking about that. But I also will say this: if Joe, is it Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. If he's thinking about dating, I would say just not be careful is not the right word, but just be cautious. Like you don't need to go in to get into a relationship. You don't need to go in to find the next one. You might, and if that opportunity presents itself and you're both in a place to do it and there's compatibility there, then by all means, maybe you should pursue that. But I think in the dating world, too many people put just hardline stances about what this is my next whatever. And it might be, but it's probably not. And let go of the pressure of whatever you're putting on yourself and whatever you might be putting on her, and just enjoy the process of dating. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah.
And then will I ever get married again? Probably not. I don't really, I mean, maybe. I'm not a no, but I'm also not a yes.
Well, it sounds like you're taking your own advice, right? You're like, well, let's see. It just is, and I'm not going to put the weight on something.
Right. But I do know this. I do know that I want to be in a long-term committed relationship. Like I want to be with one woman the rest of my life. That is what I want. Do I have to go sign a paper at the courthouse to do that? Is that even in my best interest or hers? I know that, and women might say, well, there's a lot of legal protections. I don't know that, depending on the state, that there's many more legal protections if you go down and sign a document than if you don't, depending on how long you guys have been together. And I know it's state by state specific, but I don't really have a desire now to be married. I have a desire to be in a long-term committed relationship with a woman that I love, and that's what I know.
What's the key thing that you would tell Joe? Like, what are some key pointers that you would add to dating and making sure, or things to consider before starting dating again?
Before dating?
Yes.
Number one, I'd ask yourself, why are you dating? Are you dating to find a partner where you can be in a healthy relationship with and provide and add value to each other and love each other? Or are you doing it to fill a void? Or are you doing it to get back at an ex or to make her jealous? Like, there's all sorts of things people do all the time. Or is it because you're lonely and you just need companionship? I don't know that last one is a deal breaker on why you shouldn't. It's just something to be very aware of, because you can go find a woman and just not be lonely pretty easily.
Yeah.
But when men do that, they run the risk of overlooking red flags, and they get themselves into emotionally vested relationships. And also, I think at some point, unless you're very clear about it, you're actually taking advantage of a woman. And I don't think that's fair.
Yeah,
if you're just
more
using her,
than it really is. Yeah,
right. Look, if you're using each other, like she's lonely, you're lonely, okay, and you guys are upfront about it. I mean, there's certain behavior that you could make a case for or not make a case for, but as long as you're both aware of it and you're upfront and you're honest, you guys are two grown adults. You can do whatever you want. But I would just really, really question why you are getting into a relationship before you start doing that.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add, Joe, is learn. We talk about this a lot here, but like learn, right? You went through a divorce. Why? And it can't be 100% her fault and you've done nothing wrong. That's not the answer we're looking for there, right? It's like, why did you get divorced and what was your role in it? And get clear so you can learn and grow and you can be a better version of yourself, right? And progress and move on. But if she's all at fault and you're not at fault at all, I'm telling you, there's an opportunity for you to evaluate and find something to grow and learn from.
Well, and also, here's a way to look at this. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's kind of an interesting thought experiment. If it was all her fault, let's just say hypothetically it was. Everything was her fault. Again, not true, but let's just, for the sake of this argument. Well, why did you choose her?
Good point.
And that's a thought worth considering, because I know there's a lot of men out there who are in relationships right now with women that they did not want to be in relationships with. Why? And that goes back to, what void were you filling? What need were you trying to, fill and provide for yourself at the expense of something that could have been really, really good?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Bob Ross, when making a large financial family decision, buying a home, second home, RV, investment property, do you have a system you use to make sure you evaluated as many possible aspects, or do you just research and go with instinct?
I'm more of an instinct, intuition guy. I mean, I when it comes to financial decisions, I'm a financial advisor in another life. So, I have that training and that knowledge. But yeah, sure, I'm going to look at the cost and interest rates and what I think it will be in the future. For example, about 4 months ago, I was looking to purchase a home here, just around the corner from me, actually. And I talked to the guy, and I looked at the place. He's a friend of mine, and I had an idea of what I thought it was worth and what I would pay for it. And I said, well, what do you, because he showed it to me just one evening because we're friends. And he's like, yeah, just come over. So I went over. It's a house next door to him. And he told me the amount, and I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, that's what it is. I'm like, man, that's crazy. He's like, I would have said the same thing, but my real estate agent said it's not. And I wanted you to look at it because I already have 2 offers in it at full asking price, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to make a decision before I entertain those offers. I'm like, well, that's really gracious of you, but I can't ask you to overlook quite a bit of money if you have 2 full asking price offers on the table. I'm out. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And he sold it within a week. That would have been a bad decision. Like, it was for what it was with where the market is right now. I don't think, yeah, it'll probably go up for a little bit, but the market is so volatile right now. It's not really a time for me to do it. Plus interest rates. I'm like, no, thank you. Hard pass. Yeah. Even if I was going to Airbnb the thing, it's like, it's going to take me 27 years to break even. And what could I have done with that money in 27 years? So yeah, I take all that into consideration, but I'll tell you what, my intuition's pretty good, and so is yours. And if it doesn't feel right, there's probably a reason.
Yeah.
And I knew even before I got into the house, I'm like, I don't think so. I didn't know why, but it was confirmed with the math and some other reasons. But yeah, like, use both. That's the point I'm making. Don't overlook your intuition, and don't rely just on the numbers. Like, use both.
Yeah.
Both have their place.
Well, and emotion shows up in there,
Emotion's different than intuition too, and I think we need to be very clear about that.
Totally.
Especially if your wife loves the house, because then she's emotional. She loves it because she sees the kids playing and frolicking in the living room and running around with water gun fights in the backyard. She sees all of that. And you just see the mortgage payment that you have to make.
Yeah.
So intuition is different to me than emotion is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that motion will sometimes cloud the other two.
Always will cloud it. I mean, you could play with the numbers till you're blue in the face and come up with something that works in your mind when you've already made the decision you want to have this house.
Yeah. Yep, totally. Andrew Workman, this is going to be personal, but I think it's necessary. You've been through some hard crap over the past few years, and I've done well to turn it around and rebuild while still trying to maintain being honorable to what was and hopefully for what will be. What are some of the major lessons you've learned, and what, if any, are some of the stances and or tips you've given before that this rough time has pushed you to reflect and rethink?
Yeah, what are some of the things that I've learned? Do you think he's asking specifically about getting back on the road to being better, or what? I guess it's so broad. It's just such a broad question. I mean, I've learned a lot. I mean, I've learned how to deal with my emotions. I've learned how to journal and think about that and identify where these things are coming from. I've learned how to be more patient. I've learned why our battle plan, the thing that we created 10 years ago, is so vital that you actually follow it. The value of being honest with yourself and other people. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as far as the system goes, it's the battle plan. You have to have a system like that. where you're thinking about your vision. I just sat down just a couple of days ago and recast my vision. And I was like 80, 90% the same. But there were a few things in there. I'm like, you know what? Like, I've learned a few things. These are the things that need to be included in there as well. A lot of it was around self-care. You know, that I'm willing to take care of myself. Physically, I do pretty well, but mentally and emotionally, I'm not really that great at that stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think was causing a lot of the problems in my life, especially when it came to alcohol abuse, because you can't escape it. You know, your mind and your emotions are always turned on and you don't really understand them. You don't understand why they're coming up. And so you cope or you sedate. And that I was doing both. And it created real tangible problems in my life. So I've realized I can't do that. I have to learn how to tackle them and address them, which means a lot of discomfort at times. You know, being alone, being with your thoughts, not rushing to take action. You know, we always hear this thing of overthinkers. I'm not an overthinker. I'm an overactor and an underthinker. Yeah. I think too little and I act too fast. And that goes back to that intuition. It feels right, do it.
Yeah.
Whoa, hold on. Like, take a step back for a second and ask yourself, should I really be doing that? Or if it's something you want to do, it probably will be something that you want to do tomorrow. You don't need to make the decision right now. Man, there's so many lessons I've learned.
Yeah. You know, it's for me, Andrew, full disclosure, actually, I feel this past couple weeks, I feel like I'm a little bit in this crossroads space. I'm stressed. And a lot of the time when I get into stressful circumstances, we move to an external locus of control. We immediately start focusing on all the things outside of our realm of control that is dictating and making us feel disempowered, right? I mean, that's the definition of a victim mindset or being in a space of disempowerment, is that something outside of your control is acting upon you. And there's a sense of hopelessness because there's nothing for you to do about it. That's the lie that we tell ourselves, and we can talk about another time about why we naturally do that, but that's the ultimate lie. And for me, last week, I literally did this exercise. I went, got it. Like, okay, first, deal in reality. What's the full, lay out the cards on the table. What I got placed before me. Here's the reality. Forget the meaning behind it all. Well, it means this. It shouldn't be this. Stop. This is just what is. So now, what am I going to do about it? What are the areas of responsibility? What's within my realm of control? What's possible solutions? And I start taking action. The minute you do that, this quote unquote hard crap, tough times, it's just life now. And it's amazing to me how much empowerment I get through just accepting and dealing in reality and moving to action. But most of us don't, right? Most of us hold on to, oh, I shouldn't have to do this. And this is, it's Ryan's fault. It's not my fault. And we wait and hope for circumstances to change. And that's where a sense of disempowerment comes from. And so deal with it. Yeah, it's, you got a shitty situation. Got it. Okay, it is. So what areas of responsibility, what's within my realm of control, and how do I move to action?
Simple formula. Hard to do in practice, and you'll mess up, but just keep doing that. That's a really good formula. I like it.
Mark Moraes, I think this one might have been asked already, so my apologies if it's a repeat, but why are more men, especially younger men, are starting to move more towards the right side politically? I'm more in the middle, but I've learned more, but I lean more towards the right.
Oh, it's easy. Truth, structure, discipline, commitment, sacrifice. Like, man, you let people run rampant and roughshod all over the truth and just let them do what they want and just believe everybody and help them be who they are and give them no direction or guidance or anything, men crumble under that. We need structure. We need discipline. We need objective truth with a capital T.
Would you say we're drawn towards that, Ryan? Just naturally? Yeah.
One of the largest growing churches for young men right now is the Eastern Orthodox Church. I don't know if you understand anything about these congregations, but it is structured, it is disciplined, it asks a lot, sacrifice is required, and it is intense. It's the same reason, it's the same reason we're starting to see military engagement and enrollment numbers go up over the past year or so, maybe a little less than. It's because when the message was, come find yourself and be free to express who you are, men aren't interested in that. Teach me, guide me, mold me, shape me, tell me how to behave, tell me how to be like you, aspirational, directional. These are all things that I think men are generally more of than women. And so when I saw a billboard for the Marine Corps the other day, and I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was an old school billboard, but it was new. And I'm like, finally, the messaging is like, be all that you can be, like come here and this is what you're going to do. Be part of the mission. You're not here to figure out who you are. We're here to mold you into who you could be. This is messaging that men just thrive under. We need fathering. It's also not surprising to me that the downfall and destruction of our young men and boys corresponds perfectly with the lack of male father figures in the home and community. We need fathering. We crave structure and discipline. And that's exactly what the military will give. That's what a structured church environment will give. And I also believe that is, I'm trying to be aware and be honest and fair in my assessment, but I believe that is, I'll say it this way, that is the right's message.
Yeah.
Now, is it applied perfectly? Of course not. Of course it isn't. But that's the message, and that's what men hear and what men want.
Yeah. Well, and Mark, where else are they going to go? Political left that will demonize you for being masculine, that will belittle you and throw you under the bus and say, "Oh no, you're inferior as a male, and that you're not needed." Are you joking?
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah, no wonder.
Paint all men as villains.
Yeah, the political left paints men as stupid or violent, and they're oppressors. Any individual, I mean, it says a lot about men that are politically left on how distorted their minds are. Because I'm like, how do you even like operate with like accepting that as the status quo of you, which is just so damaging, like you probably very low self-esteem, probably falls into the category of nice guys, of course, just appeasing everybody, just making sure that everyone's okay and having zero standards for oneself and being shit on constantly by people. That's like the political left male.
I think it's the quintessential one that we see. I mean, I'll also say that I do think there are people who have liberal ideas that I could say are very successful and faithful and committed and able to make sacrifices for their families and their communities. Sure. But you start dancing on those fringes and it gets bad real quick. And that's I would make that distinction between being a Democrat or a liberal and being a leftist. And that denial of truth and men are the villains, of course. That's a great point you made. Where else would they go? Good call.
Yeah.
Not interested.
It's crazy. All right, sir. Call to action. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've got the event coming up May 1st. So it's last minute now. But if you still want a ticket, we've still got a few tickets left. So jump on over there at themensforge.com. That's going to be a really, really good event. I've been talking with our team every week to shape it and put everything together, and I'm excited for that. Outside of that, check out our resources over at orderofman.com and orderofman.com/battle ready. That would be your marching orders for today. Anything else though, Kipp?
Nope. Just connect with Michler on the socials, Instagram and X at Ryan Michler. And, just a thank you. As always, some of these questions, we had some tough questions that are difficult circumstances. You're obviously dealing with it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have asked the question. And so I'm grateful that you're dealing with it and your willingness to put it out there for us to talk about and for other men to consider for themselves. That's the power of this conversation and what we get to do each week. So me personally, just thank you.
Yeah, awesome. All right, guys, you've got your marching orders. Appreciate you all. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.